So, let's talk about ADHD. For so long, we've heard one story about it, right? That it's a disadvantage, something to be managed or overcome, especially at work. But what if that's only half the story? What if, in the wild, chaotic world of startups, the very things we call symptoms are actually superpowers in disguise?
Okay, so that's the big question we're tackling today. We're going to flip the script on the conventional wisdom. We're going to dig into why these traits, the impulsivity, the distractibility, the relentless energy, things that might get you in trouble in a normal job, are incredibly common among some of the most successful founders out there.
And look, this isn't just a theory. This is a powerful quote from David Neilman, the guy who founded JetBlue. And he's not an outlier. We're talking about people like the founder of Kinko's, Charles Schwab. These are titans of industry. They all have what we now call neurodiversity, which is really just a fancy way of saying their brains are wired a little differently. And they didn't just succeed in spite of it. They learned how to use it as their secret weapon.
All right, so here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll unpack this ADHD advantage. Then we'll get into the science of why the ADHD brain is almost perfectly built for startups. After that, we'll get super practical with a playbook for building external systems, and then turn inward to master your internal world. And finally, we'll look at what all this means for the future.
Okay, first things first, we have to completely reframe how we even talk about this. We're shifting away from seeing this as a disorder and starting to see it as a difference. It's not about what's wrong, it's about asking in what environment do these traits become strengths?
And this, right here, this is the whole game. Look at this. On one side, you have the clinical terms, impulsive. But in a startup, that's a risk taker. Distractible, that's someone who sees opportunities others miss. See what's happening? In the right context, the so-called weaknesses are actually the very traits you need to build something new. They're not bugs. They are, quite literally, features.
But why? Why does this overlap even exist? Well, let's get into the science of it, because it turns out the ADHD brain is uniquely, and I mean uniquely, wired for the chaos of building a company from the ground up.
Okay, this is so important to understand. The ADHD brain doesn't have an attention deficit. It has an attention difference. It runs on an interest-based nervous system. So instead of being motivated by what someone says is important, it's activated by genuine curiosity, passion, or real sense of urgency. For a founder trying to solve a problem they are absolutely obsessed with, this system isn't a liability. It is rocket fuel.
And this leads to another huge advantage. In a stable, predictable world, slow, careful planning is great. But a startup isn't stable or predictable. It's a rapidly changing environment. And in that kind of world, the bias for quick action, for making a decision and learning from it fast, almost always beats waiting for the perfect plan that's already out of date by the time you launch it.
So if the internal wiring is a bit creative, let's say, then the secret to harnessing all that energy is building really strong external systems. It's like building scaffolding around a building. And we're going to look at a simple three-part playbook: people, process, and tech. First up, people, you cannot do it all alone. A classic powerful model is this visionary/integrator dynamic. The founder is often the visionary, the one with 1,000 ideas, seeing the future. But they need an integrator, someone like a COO, who is obsessed with details, with process, with making the trains run on time. It's that partnership that turns crazy ideas into a real functioning business.
Next, process. How do you deal with that fire hose of new ideas without getting distracted? You build an idea dock. It's simple. Every single new idea, no matter how wild, gets captured immediately in one place. This does two things. It respects the creative impulse, but it also contains it so you can review everything later and strategically decide which one idea you're actually going to focus on. This is how you cure shiny object syndrome.
You know how the brain wants to chase what's interesting, not necessarily what's important? Well, this is how you fight back. You need an external system to force priority. A simple ABC method like this is perfect. It makes you step back and ask, okay, forget what's exciting for a second. What is actually urgent and important right now? It creates clarity.
And last but not least, tech. Think of these tools as an exoskeleton for your brain. Things like newsfeed eradicators that just delete your social media feeds so you can't get sucked in, tab managers to tame browser chaos. You can even use gamified apps like Habitica to make your to-do list feel more engaging. And AI? It's incredible for taking a huge, scary project and saying, hey, break this down into 10 tiny steps for me.
Okay, but all the systems in the world won't help if your inner world is in chaos. So external systems are only half the battle. Now we need to turn inward and talk about managing your own nervous system and your physical space. This is just as critical.
So a quick biology lesson.
You basically have a gas pedal and a brake pedal in your body. The gas is your fight or flight system. The brake is your rest and digest system. A lot of entrepreneurs, especially those with ADHD, have their foot glued to the gas pedal. The goal isn't to never feel stress, but to learn how to consciously hit the brakes so you can actually focus and recover.
So how do you actually hit the brakes? Well, you could do it intentionally. Getting into a deep flow state is one of the best ways. But you can also do things like specific deep breathing exercises, mindfulness, daily movement, or even just a 30-second blast of cold water in the shower. These things aren't just nice to have. They are direct inputs to calm your nervous system. Okay, and don't underestimate your space. Your desk, your office, it's not just a place to work. It's a tool that can either help or hurt your focus. Things like creating a distraction-free zone, using calming colors, getting as much natural light as possible, and having a standing desk so you can move around, these are small changes that make a huge difference.
So after all that, what's the big idea here? What does this all add up to? Well, it points to a massive shift in how we should be thinking about work, talent, and what it takes to innovate.
And look, the numbers back this up. We're not just talking about feelings here, we're talking about measurable strengths. When you put neurodivergent people in the right environment, they demonstrate incredible levels of hyperfocus, creativity, and out-of-the-box thinking. The talent is there. The potential is massive. The question is, are we building environments that can unlock it?
And this is the single most important idea I want you to walk away with. It's all about FIT. Success isn't about trying to cure yourself or force yourself to be someone you're not. It's about becoming an architect of your own context. It's about designing a job, a company, and a life that plays to your unique strengths instead of punishing your weaknesses.
So I'll leave you with this final thought. For the last century, we've tried to make people fit the job. What if that's completely backwards? What if the future belongs to the companies, to the leaders who learn how to make the job fit the person? Because embracing neurodiversity isn't just a nice idea, it's a competitive advantage. The next truly world-changing innovation isn't going to come from someone who thinks just like everyone else. It's going to come from someone whose brain is wired differently, not in spite of it, but because of it.